Mellado here from Australians For Assange. Thanks for joining us today, taking the time to answer some questions for us.
My pleasure, Walter.
Fantastic, thank you. First, can I get your thoughts on the iconic 𝗔𝗩𝗦𝗔𝗡𝗚 that seems to be
that's
making...
a great thing Australians For Assange have done is the livery on the 𝗔𝗩𝗦𝗔𝗡𝗚. It used to be my mobile home. I'd take the daughter down to Wilson's Promontory, but now it's been elevated and it's got a bigger and better job to tour the streets of Melbourne and Victoria, bringing Julian's plight and dire circumstances to everybody's notice.
Yes, fantastic. It does stand out, and it has made a few road trips already, as I'm aware, so we'll keep that van on the road for a little while, no doubt. Can I ask how your thoughts on the recent passing of the motion in support of Julian by the City of Melbourne, a capital city in Australia?
That was great. Melbourne, that's wonderful. I believe it's now the 8th council that has passed motion to support Julian, and now if I can get your help and everybody else's, the supporters involved, we'll try and get we will cause the Victorian government to sincerely contemplate giving support to Julian, who is, of course, as you know, a child of Melbourne.
That's right. It's only fitting, I think, that we keep working on them, and we will. You've been around the world, John, and met and worked with many of the different supporter groups overseas as well as Australia. Is there anything you'd like to say to all the supporters around the world who support Julian?
Yes. There's a lot I'd like to say, but I just cut it short to thank you. And there is a worldwide upwelling of support, a worldwide upwelling of vigorous determination to ensure Julian Assange comes home to his children, his family, his city, his state and his country.
When was the last time you spoke to Julian, and how did he respond, or how did he sound to you under the circumstances?
Well, Julian has allowed a 10-minute, maximum 10-minute social call overseas on occasion. So we spoke last week. He sounded well enough under the circumstances. He always asks me how I am, and out of habit I always say, or almost always say, how are you? But then the image of Julian sitting in a 3-metre by 1800 cell with a toilet as a companion and books comes to my mind, and I stop myself saying how are you, because I know that he can't answer that question. Yeah.
It's a terribly difficult situation. Yeah. I understand. Now, I'm sure, as you can tell, that you and Julian share a special bond. You are very similar in many ways. Starting with your looks, he has a striking resemblance to yourself by his mannerism, but also beliefs in peace, truth, and against war. I understand you too were a peace campaigner in your time, John?
Walter, the zeitgeist for me was the 60s and 70s, and we were against the Vietnam War, and successfully. With the zeitgeist for Julian's times are very different, and what they call forth from activists or people who seek truth from government, people amongst us who wish to ensure that governments don't commit crimes in our names. They're very different. And so you can see in Julian's case WikiLeaks, which brings us information by which we can make our judgments as to what to do about the crimes that governments have committed. So each person is distinct, unique, and in their own times, or we call it Zeitgeist, and should be measured that way. Julian has done a remarkable, outstanding contribution. Yes, amazing.
He has indeed. Yeah. He has indeed. There's been spying on Julian and his lawyers, plots to poison him, to kidnap him. Trials should have been thrown out just on those grounds long ago. How does that make you feel, John?
Walter, I mean, you know how to answer that question. Of course, it makes you feel like shite. I just imagine, you know, for a Mount Everest of criminality that's surrounded Julian, and at the very peak of it seems to be that they wanted to actually sneak into the embassy and put poison in his cup. There's a mountain of criminality, and I'd like to say here that the Australian government has this mantra that they're committed to ensuring due process, and the second verse of the mantra is that we have offered and given consular assistance. Dealing with the consular assistance first, they say that they've made 100 offers. Well, this is a testimony to failure. Julian has now been in the embassy 11 years, and to top it all off, evidence that they were going to poison him or kidnap him from the embassy. Well, it doesn't make you feel good. You'd hope that one of the states, you'd insist, actually, not hope, you'd insist that one of the states, the Australians, the UK, the Americans and the Swedish, one of the states involved would simply follow their own laws in regards to Julian and all other things. If they follow their own laws, then Julian will be at home with his kids. Very simple.
Doesn't sound like too much to ask for.
No, just follow their own laws. Nothing else.
Well, what else can we do to push that issue with the government, as supporters, as people who just want to live in a just world, a just society? What else can people do to try and move the dial, shift the dial in that regard?
Well, I call social media civic media, because it brings civil problems and civil solutions to all of us. You saw with 60 Minutes the other night, a great success. Many people watched it throughout. The people that work in 60 Minutes are experts. They understand that the appetite for information about Julian and the hunger for justice for Julian is already there. 60 Minutes doesn't create it. What creates it is the simple activism of ordinary people making themselves and their neighbours aware. That's what creates it. And that's what will bring the government to its senses and ensure that they obey their mantra of due process. There's so much process abuse in Julian's hearing in the last 11 years, treatment of Julian. There's so much process abuse that this hearing on the last, the last deluge, I'll call it a deluge, of due process abuse emanating from UC Global, the CIA, Mossad, and discovered and under investigation in Spain by 𝗝𝗨𝗟𝗏𝗧𝗏. There's so much abuse that the case, the hearing, ought to be stopped now, and that our government and Prime Minister Morrison pick up the telephone and say to Boris Johnson, who used to be a journalist, by the way, this has got to stop, send him home. That's all that's required.
Beggars belief, doesn't it, when you think about all the things that have been exposed.
This has got to stop. Bring him home. That's all they have to do. Nothing more. It doesn't even have to be public. All Julian has to do is go down, get on the plane, fly home.
It's Julian's birthday today, as you'd well be aware. Did you get a chance to send him a birthday wish in any way, shape or form?
Oh yeah. Well, usual procedure, you know. You get somebody who I speak to the lawyers, and the lawyers are allowed to speak to him, and they carry my message of love and affection.
Fantastic.
A message to Julian.